They say the delivery room is where life begins. But for Eleanor, it was designed to be her tomb. As she lay struggling to breathe, gripping the bedsheets in agony, she looked up, not to see her husband holding her hand, but to see his mistress standing over the oxygen tank, smiling as she turned the dial to 0. Her husband, the arrogance written all over his face, didn't just watch. He checked his watch, impatient for her to die so he could inherit her life insurance. But there was one thing neither of them knew. Elena wasn't the poor orphan they thought she was. She was the only daughter of Arthur Sterling, the ruthlessly protective oil tycoon, and he was already in the elevator. The sterile air of St. Jude's Memorial Hospital in Seattle hummed with the quiet, rhythmic beeping of monitors. Outside, a torrential rainstorm battered the glass windows of the VIP maternity suite, mirroring the chaotic pain tearing through Elena Caldwell's body. Elena was 24, pale and exhausted. Her labor had been dragging on for 16 hours. Sweat plastered her blonde hair to her forehead, her knuckles white as she gripped the metal railing of the bed. "Marcus," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Marcus, please. It hurts." Marcus Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Tech, stood by the window, his back to her. He was dressed in a bespoke Italian suit, looking more like he was attending a board meeting than the birth of his first child. He didn't turn around. He was typing furiously on his phone. "You're fine, Elena," Marcus said, his tone dismissive. "Women do this every day. Stop being so dramatic." Elena swallowed a sob. She looked toward the nurse who had just entered the room. The nurse, a striking woman with sharp features and dark hair pulled into a tight bun, didn't look at Eleanor with compassion. Her name tag read Jessica Thorne. Elena didn't know that Jessica wasn't assigned to this floor. She didn't know that Jessica was wearing a stolen badge. And she certainly didn't know that Jessica had been sleeping with Marcus for the last 2 years. "Check her vitals," Marcus commanded, finally turning around. He looked at Jessica, a dark, knowing look passing between them. "And make sure this process is over soon. I have a flight to Tokyo in the morning." Jessica smirked, moving to the head of the bed. "Don't worry, Mr. Caldwell. I'll take care of everything." Eleanor felt a wave of dizziness. The contractions were coming faster now, ripping through her lower back. "I can't breathe," she wheezed. "The mask! Please!" Jessica leaned down. To anyone watching from the hallway, it would look like she was adjusting the oxygen mask to help the patient. But under the guise of comfort, Jessica's hand moved to the flow regulator on the wall. With a cold, precise movement, she twisted the dial clockwise. "Off." "Here," Jessica whispered, her lips brushing Elena's ear. "Just relax, honey. It'll all be over soon." Elena sucked in a breath, but the cool stream of oxygen she expected was gone. Panic flared in her chest. She gasped, her lungs burning. The room began to spin. She looked at Marcus, her eyes pleading, wide with terror. "Marcus, no air," she choked out. Marcus stepped closer. He didn't rush to help. He stood at the foot of the bed, watching her struggle with a detached curiosity. "The monitors say you're fine, Elena. Stop seeking attention." "She's hyperventilating," Jessica said smoothly, her hand resting firmly on Elena's shoulder, pinning her down. "It's just panic. Let her endure it. It speeds up the labor." The heart rate monitor began to screech, a high-pitched warning that Elena's pulse was skyrocketing before plummeting. The baby was in distress. Elena's vision tunneled. She saw Marcus smirk, saw him mouth the words, "Finally." In those last seconds of consciousness, clarity hit Elena harder than the pain. "They want me dead." She had kept her secret for 3 years. She had played the role of the humble library archivist he had met at a coffee shop. She wanted to be loved for herself, not for the billions attached to the surname Sterling. She hadn't even told Marcus that Arthur Sterling, the man feared on Wall Street and in the oil fields of Texas, was her father. As the darkness swallowed her, Elena's hand went limp. The continuous flatline tone screamed through the room. "Time of death?" Marcus asked, checking his Rolex. 11:42 p.m., Jessica replied, pulling the sheet up, not over Elena's face, but over the monitors to muffle the sound. "What about the brat? If she's gone, the baby is a complication I don't need," Marcus sneered. Suddenly, the doors to the suite burst open. It wasn't a doctor. It wasn't security. It was a team of 6 men in black tactical suits, followed by an older man in a charcoal trench coat. He leaned heavily on a silver-handled cane, but his eyes burned with a ferocity that made the air in the room drop 10 degrees. Arthur Sterling had arrived, and he had heard the flatline. The silence that followed the intrusion was heavier than the storm outside. Marcus froze. He recognized the old man. Everyone in the business world recognized Arthur Sterling. He was a titan, a man who destroyed companies for sport. But Marcus couldn't comprehend why he was here, in a maternity ward in Seattle. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus demanded, trying to regain his composure. "This is a private room. Get out." Arthur ignored him. He moved with surprising speed for his age, shoving Jessica aside with the handle of his cane. He looked at his daughter's pale, lifeless face. "Get the doctors!" Arthur roared, his voice shaking the walls. "Now!" 2 of the tactical men vanished into the hall. Within seconds, a crash team of doctors, the real doctors, swarmed the room. "She's not breathing! Code blue!" a doctor yelled. "Get the oxygen flowing! Who turned this off?" Jessica backed away, her face draining of color. She bumped into Marcus, who looked equally confused. I didn't touch it," Jessica stammered. Arthur stood like a statue in the corner, his hands resting on his cane, watching the resuscitation efforts. His eyes, however, never left Marcus. He watched the way Marcus didn't cry. He watched the way Marcus exchanged a terrified glance with the nurse. "Charge to 200, clear!" Thump! Elena's body jerked. "No pulse, again! 300, clear!" Thump! A jagged breath rattled through Elena's throat. The monitor beeped. Erratic. Weak. But there. "We have a rhythm!" the doctor shouted. "She needs an emergency C-section immediately. The baby is in distress. Move!" As they wheeled Elena's bed out, Marcus made a move to follow, feigning concern. "Elena! Oh my God, save her!" A heavy hand landed on Marcus's chest, stopping him dead. It was the head of Arthur's security detail, a man built like a tank. "You aren't going anywhere," Arthur said, his voice low and gravelly. The room cleared out, leaving only Marcus, Jessica, Arthur, and his guards. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus said, adjusting his tie, trying to play the grieving husband. "I don't know why you're here, or how you know my wife, but I am the CEO of—" "I know who you are, Marcus Caldwell," Arthur interrupted. He walked slowly toward the window, looking at the rain. "I know your company is 3 months away from bankruptcy. I know you took out a $10 million life insurance policy on my daughter 2 weeks ago, and I know you've been sleeping with this woman since your honeymoon." Jessica gasped. Marcus's eyes went wide. "That's slander. I'll sue you." Arthur turned. A cruel smile played on his lips. "Your wife? You think you married a poor librarian, didn't you, boy? You thought she was a nobody you could discard once you cashed the check." Arthur stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "Elena didn't take my name because she wanted a simple life. She is Elena Sterling, sole heiress to the Sterling energy fortune." The blood drained from Marcus's face so fast he looked like a corpse himself. "Sterling? No, that's impossible. She wanted true love," Arthur spat. She wanted to know she was chosen for her heart, not her inheritance. And you tried to kill her for pocket change. Arthur looked at Jessica, who was trembling by the equipment cart. And you, the fake nurse. Did you really think I wouldn't have my daughter watched? I have audio recordings from this room for the last 20 minutes. Turn the dial, she said. It'll be over soon, she said. Marcus fell to his knees. Arthur, Mr. Sterling, please, it was a mistake. We were just trying to help her relax. It was a medical error. Arthur tapped his cane on the floor. The police are already in the lobby, but I told them to wait. Hope flickered in Marcus's eyes. Thank you. We can work this out. I can explain. I told them to wait, Arthur continued, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. Because the police are too gentle. You hurt my little girl. You tried to kill my grandson. If Eleanor dies on that operating table, Marcus, I won't send you to jail. Arthur leaned down, his face inches from Marcus. I will buy the prison. I will buy the guards. And I will make sure you live a very, very long time in a very small, dark room. The door opened. A doctor stepped in, looking grave. Mr. Sterling. Arthur turned, his stoic mask cracking for the first time. Speak. Your daughter. She's in a coma. The lack of oxygen caused severe trauma. We delivered the baby boy. He's in the NICU, critical but stable. But Eleanor, the doctor shook his head. We don't know if she'll wake up. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. If she was in a coma, she couldn't testify. She couldn't tell them what she saw. Arthur saw that relief. He saw the spark of calculation return to Marcus's eyes. Arthur straightened his coat. Take them away, he signaled to his guards. Hand them to the police, but ensure the media knows exactly who they are. As the guards dragged a screaming Jessica and a protesting Marcus out of the room, Arthur looked back at the empty spot where his daughter's bed had been. You think you've won because she's silent, Marcus, Arthur whispered to the empty room. But you forgot one thing. I have the money to make the world scream for her. 6 months had passed. The scandal had been the talk of Seattle for weeks, but Marcus Caldwell was a slippery man, with high-priced lawyers paid for by liquidating the last of his company's assets. He had managed to get out on bail. The audio recording Arthur mentioned? Marcus's lawyers argued it was illegal surveillance and inadmissible in court. The attempted murder charge was downgraded to medical negligence for Jessica and conspiracy for Marcus, and the trial was delayed endlessly. Elena remained in a coma in a private wing of the hospital, guarded by Arthur's private army. Marcus sat in his penthouse, swirling a glass of scotch. He was broke, his reputation tarnished, but he was free. And technically, he was still Elena's husband. He was still the legal guardian of the child, though Arthur had blocked him from seeing the boy legally. We need money, Marcus, Jessica said, walking into the living room. She had dyed her hair blonde, trying to look like Elena. It was sickening. The lawyers want another 50 grand. I know, Marcus snapped. The old man has my accounts frozen, but I have a plan. What plan? Elena is brain dead. Everyone knows it, Marcus said, standing up. As her husband, I have the right to make medical decisions if the doctors agree there is no hope of recovery. I can pull the plug. Jessica's eyes widened. And then? And then, Marcus smiled, a cold, predatory grin. She dies intestate, without a will. The sterling fortune flows to her next of kin, her son. And who is the father and legal guardian of that son? You, Jessica breathed. Me. I control the boy. I control the billions. I just need to get into that hospital and convince the medical board to let her go. The intercom buzzed. It was the doorman. Mr. Caldwell. There is a delivery for you. I didn't order anything. It's an envelope, sir, marked Urgent Legal. Marcus buzzed him up. When he tore open the envelope, he found a single piece of paper inside. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was an invitation. You are cordially invited to the Sterling Charity Gala. Saturday night, the Grand Ballroom. There was a handwritten note at the bottom in elegant cursive. Come see what I've built for your son. A. Sterling. Why would he invite you? Jessica asked, reading over his shoulder. He wants to make peace, Marcus said, his ego inflating instantly. He knows he can't keep the boy from me forever. He wants to cut a deal. He wants to buy me off. Marcus laughed, tossing the invitation on the table. He thinks he can buy me out with a few million. I'm going to take it all, Jessica. We're going to that party, and we're going to walk in there like we own the place. Little did Marcus know, the invitation wasn't a peace offering. It was the trap door springing open. The Sterling Charity Gala was the event of the decade. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was draped in silver and gold, filled with the city's elite, judges, politicians, and business tycoons. When Marcus Caldwell and Jessica Thorne stepped out of their rented limousine, the flashbulbs didn't pop. The paparazzi lowered their cameras. It was a silence more damning than shouting. They walked the red carpet in a vacuum of judgment. Jessica adjusted her dress, a garish red gown that was far too bright for the somber elegance of the event. She gripped Marcus's arm. Everyone is staring at us, Marcus. I don't like this. Let them stare, Marcus whispered, his jaw set. They're staring at the next guardian of the Sterling fortune. Just smile. They entered the ballroom. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and fresh lilies. As they moved through the crowd, conversations died instantly. People turned their backs, forming a physical wall against them. A waiter intentionally swerved to avoid serving them champagne. Mr. Caldwell, a deep voice boomed. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. At the center of the room, sitting on a velvet armchair like a throne, was Arthur Sterling. He held a sleeping baby in his arms, his grandson, Leo. Marcus puffed out his chest and marched forward, dragging Jessica with him. Arthur, I see you brought my son. I brought my grandson, Arthur corrected, not looking up from the baby's face. He has his mother's nose, and thankfully, none of your cowardice. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Enough games, Marcus said, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of the entire room. You invited me here to cut a deal. I'm the boy's father. Elena is gone, effectively. I have the medical power of attorney paperwork drafted. I'm prepared to let her go with dignity. Jessica nodded, trying to look solemn. It's what she would have wanted, to not suffer. Arthur slowly looked up. His eyes were dry, hard chips of flint. He carefully handed the baby to a nanny standing behind him, who whisked the child away. Arthur stood up, leaning on his cane. He was shorter than Marcus, but he loomed over him. You speak of dignity, Arthur said, his voice amplified by the silence of the room. You who checked your watch while she suffocated? You who brought your mistress into the delivery room disguised as a nurse? Allegations! Marcus shouted, playing to the crowd. Unproven allegations. I am a grieving husband being persecuted by a billionaire bully. Marcus turned to the crowd, spreading his arms. He is holding my wife hostage in a private facility. He denies me access to her. He denies me my son. I am here to demand justice. For a moment, Marcus looked convincing. He was charismatic, handsome, and desperate. A few guests murmured uncertainly. Arthur let Marcus finish his performance. He waited until Marcus was panting slightly from the exertion of his lies. You want access to Elena? Arthur asked softly. Yes. I want to say goodbye to my wife, Marcus yelled. Arthur reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a small remote control. Very well, Arthur said. I thought you might say that. Arthur pressed a button. The massive crystal chandeliers dimmed. A giant projection screen descended from the ceiling behind the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur announced, his voice turning cold. Mr. Caldwell wants to see his wife. Let us grant his wish. Marcus smirked in the dark. A memorial video, he thought. The old man is going to play a sad montage of photos to make everyone cry. Perfect. It confirms she's as good as dead. The screen flickered to life. But it wasn't a photo montage. It was grainy, black and white footage. The timestamp in the corner read, 2 days ago. The room gasped. On the screen was a hospital room. A woman was gripping parallel bars, sweat dripping down her face. Her legs were shaking violently. A physical therapist stood next to her. Come on, Elena, the therapist on the screen said. One more step. I have to stand, the woman on the screen gritted out. Her voice was raspy, damaged, but undeniably hers. I have to stand. For Leo. Marcus felt the blood leave his body. He stumbled back, bumping into a waiter. No, he whispered. That's fake. That's a deep fake. Jessica let out a small whimper, covering her mouth. The video cut to another clip. Ideally, Eleanor was sitting in a chair, holding a newspaper from this morning. She looked directly into the camera lens. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them, but the fire in them was terrifying. Marcus, the video Elena said. The audio in the ballroom was crystal clear. It sounded like she was whispering right in his ear. You thought I couldn't hear you, she said on the screen. When the lights went out, when the air stopped. I heard you check your watch. I heard you tell Jessica to hurry up because you had a flight to Tokyo. On screen, tears streamed down her face, but her voice didn't waver. I didn't die, Marcus. I refused to die, because I wasn't going to leave my son with a monster. The screen went black. The lights in the ballroom didn't come back up. A single spotlight hit the stage door. The doors swung open. A collective intake of breath sucked the air out of the room. Elena Caldwell sat in a wheelchair, pushed by one of Arthur's guards. She wore a stunning emerald green gown that hung loosely on her frail frame. Her blonde hair was shorter, chopped into a bob to hide the thinning from the stress of recovery. She looked weak, but her chin was held high. Elena, Marcus choked out. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. But the doctors said, brain dead. My doctors, Arthur's voice cut through the dark from the stage. Private doctors, loyal doctors. We kept her recovery a secret for this exact moment, to see if you would show remorse, or if you would come here to dance on her grave. Elena signaled the guard to stop. She placed her hands on the armrests of the wheelchair. Help me up, she commanded the guard. Ma'am, you aren't ready. Help me. Up. The guard hesitated, then offered his arm. Trembling, Elena pushed herself up. Her legs shook. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. She stood. She swayed, but she stood. She looked across the room, locking eyes with Marcus and Jessica. You turned off my oxygen, Elena said, her voice live now. Not a recording. It was quiet, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. You tried to murder me for an insurance payout and a tech company that was already failing. Jessica turned to run, but 2 security guards blocked the exit. I didn't mean to, Jessica shrieked, breaking down. He made me do it. Marcus told me it was the only way we could be together. He said you were worth nothing alive. Shut up! Marcus lunged at Jessica, slapping her across the face. The crowd screamed. It was chaos. The mask had slipped completely. Marcus Caldwell wasn't the grieving CEO. He was a violent, cornered animal. Elena didn't flinch at the violence. She just watched, her expression filled with icy pity. "You wanted my father's money, Marcus?" Elena asked. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a folded document. "This is the divorce settlement. I signed it this morning. You get nothing, no alimony, no shares, no custody." She let the paper drop to the floor. "And you also get this." She pointed to the main doors of the ballroom. They burst open. This time it wasn't waiters. It was the Seattle Police Department, led by the Chief of Police himself. "Marcus Caldwell, Jessica Thorne," the chief announced, walking briskly toward them with handcuffs drawn. "You are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud." Marcus panicked. He looked around for an escape, but he was surrounded by the very society he tried so hard to impress. They were recording him on their phones, sneering at him. "Elena, baby, please!" Marcus cried as the officers grabbed his arms, wrenching them behind his back. "I love you. I was confused. It was the stress. Don't let them take the father of your child." Elena finally sat back down in her wheelchair, exhausted by the effort of standing. She looked at her husband as he was dragged away, kicking and screaming. "The father of my child died the night I went into labor," Elena said softly, though only Arthur heard her. "That man is just a stranger." As Marcus and Jessica were hauled out of the ballroom, screaming accusations at each other, Arthur placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "It's over, Ellie," he whispered. Elena looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. "No, Dad, it's not over. He has connections. He'll try to buy his way out. We need to make sure he has nothing left to buy with." Arthur smiled, a terrifyingly proud smile. "That's my girl. Part 1 is done. Now, we destroy his legacy." The trial of Marcus Caldwell wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was a public dissection. For 3 grueling months, the King County Superior Court had been a circus of media vans, protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for Eleanor," and curious onlookers desperate to glimpse the fallen CEO. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was stale and thick with tension. Marcus sat at the defense table, his posture rigid. Gone were the Italian silk suits that had once defined his persona. Today, he wore a modest, slightly ill-fitting grey suit, a calculated wardrobe choice by his lead defense attorney, Richard Vane, designed to make him look humble, harmless. But Marcus didn't feel humble. He felt a simmering, arrogant rage. He tapped his pen against the mahogany table, staring at the back of the prosecutor's head. "Stop fidgeting," Richard Vane hissed, not looking up from his legal pad. Vane was known as the Shark of Seattle. He cost $2,000 an hour, and Marcus was burning through his secret reserves to pay him. "The jury is watching your hands. Nervous hands look guilty." "I'm not nervous, Richard. I'm impatient," Marcus whispered back, his eyes darting to the gallery. In the front row, sitting with the stillness of a predator waiting to strike, was Arthur Sterling. The old man looked bored. He was slowly peeling a mandarin orange, placing the rinds in a neat pile on a silk handkerchief. He hadn't missed a single day of the trial. Every time Marcus looked back, Arthur was there, watching him with those cold, flinty eyes. "State your next witness," the judge commanded, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the room. The prosecutor stood up, buttoning his jacket. "The people call Jessica Thorne." A ripple of noise went through the courtroom. The gavel banged. "Order!" The side door opened, and Jessica walked in. She looked unrecognizable. The glamorous, sharp-tongued mistress was gone. She wore a prison-issued orange jumpsuit, her wrists shackled to her waist. Her hair was limp, her face devoid of makeup, revealing the stark terror underneath. She had taken a plea deal weeks ago, reduced sentencing in exchange for full testimony against the mastermind. As she passed the defense table, Marcus leaned forward, his eyes wide. "Jessica," he mouthed. "Don't." She didn't even look at him. She walked to the stand, took the oath, and sat down. "Ms. Thorne," the prosecutor began, pacing slowly in front of the jury box. "Can you tell the court who instructed you to turn off the oxygen supply to Elena Caldwell on the night of November 14th? Jessica gripped the microphone, her knuckles white. She took a shaky breath. "It was him. Marcus Caldwell." "Liar!" Marcus slammed his hand on the table, causing his lawyer to flinch. "Mr. Caldwell, one more outburst and you will be held in contempt," the judge warned. Jessica continued, her voice gaining strength, fueled by a mixture of fear and hatred for the man who had promised her the world and delivered her a prison cell. "He planned it for months," Jessica told the jury, tears streaming down her face. "He told me that Elena was worth more dead than alive. He showed me the life insurance policy. $10 million. He said he needed the liquid cash to cover up losses at Caldwell Tech because the board was investigating him for embezzlement." The jury scribbled furiously in their notepads. "He practiced it with me," Jessica sobbed, finally looking at Marcus with pure venom. "He had a medical mannequin in his private office. He showed me exactly how to twist the valve so it would look like a mechanical failure. He said, 'Just turn it, wait 3 minutes, and we'll be rich forever.'" "Cross-examination?" the judge asked. Richard Vane stood up. He adjusted his tie. He looked confident. Marcus relaxed slightly. This was what he paid for. Vane was about to tear her credibility apart. But Vane didn't move toward the witness stand. He stood in place, checking his smartwatch. A frown creased his forehead. He tapped the screen, looked at Marcus, and then looked at the judge. "Your Honor," Vane said, his voice strangely flat, "I would like to request a brief recess. I have a procedural matter to discuss with my client." The judge narrowed her eyes. "Make it quick, counselor." The court recessed for 15 minutes. Marcus was hustled into a small, soundproof consultation room adjacent to the court. As soon as the door clicked shut, Marcus turned on Vane. "What are you doing? Why didn't you destroy her? She's lying." Vane didn't answer. He was packing his briefcase. He slid his laptop into the leather bag and snapped the clasps shut. "Richard?" Marcus asked, confused. "Where are you going?" Vane finally looked at him. There was no warmth in his eyes, only professional detachment. "I'm withdrawing as your counsel, Marcus." "You can't do that. We're in the middle of a trial." "I can when there is a breach of contract regarding payment," Vane said smoothly. Marcus laughed nervously. "Payment? I wired you $200,000 yesterday from the Cayman account." Vane pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the metal table. It was a bank notification. Transaction failed. Insufficient funds. Account closed. "That's impossible," Marcus stammered, his face draining of color. "That account has $3 million in it. It's untraceable." "It was untraceable," Vane corrected, "until this morning. It seems the bank in the Caymans was acquired by a larger holding company yesterday. They immediately audited all anonymous accounts and froze assets suspected of being tied to criminal activity." "Who?" Marcus whispered. "Who bought the bank?" Vane paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "Sterling Global Finance. Arthur Sterling bought the bank, Marcus. He bought the entire bank just to freeze your accounts." Vane opened the door. "Good luck, Mr. Caldwell. I don't work for charity." Marcus was left alone in the room, the silence deafening. He had no lawyer. He had no money. The walls felt like they were closing in physically. Suddenly, the door buzzed again. Marcus looked up, expecting a bailiff. Instead, Arthur Sterling walked in. He moved slowly, leaning heavily on his silver-handled cane, but his presence filled the cramped room like a thundercloud. He didn't sit. He stood by the door, blocking the exit. "You," Marcus breathed, backing up until his legs hit the table. "You bought my lawyer?" "I bought his firm," Arthur corrected calmly. "It was a sound investment. They have excellent litigation stats. Firing you as a client was just a perk of the restructuring." Arthur reached into his charcoal trench coat and pulled out a folded document. He tossed it onto the table. It wasn't a legal brief. It was a contract. "I wanted to deliver this personally," Arthur said, his voice low and gravelly, sounding like stones grinding together. "It's the final paperwork for Caldwell Tech." "My company is fine," Marcus spat, trying to summon a shred of his old bravado. "The board loves me. Even if I go to jail, I own 51% of the shares. I'll run it from my cell. Read the document, Marcus." Marcus looked down. His eyes scanned the header. "Notice of insolvency and asset liquidation." "You were leveraged," Arthur explained, speaking as if he were teaching a slow child. "You borrowed against your shares to pay for your lifestyle. When the news of the trial hit, your stock plummeted. The banks called in the loans. You couldn't pay." Arthur took a step closer. "So, the banks sold the debt. To me." Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. "You own my debt." "I own you," Arthur said. "I called in the debt this morning. You defaulted, which means I exercised my right to seize collateral. I seized your shares, Marcus, all of them." Arthur checked his pocket watch. "As of 9 a.m. today, I am the sole owner of Caldwell Tech." You can't." Marcus slumped into the metal chair, his legs giving out. "That company is my legacy. It's my name. You can't take my name." A cruel, thin smile spread across Arthur's face. It was the first time Marcus had seen him smile in 6 months, and it was terrifying. "Oh, I didn't keep the company, Marcus. God, no. Your technology is derivative, and your culture is toxic. I dissolved it." "Dissolved?" "I stripped it for parts," Arthur said ruthlessly. "I sold your patents to your biggest competitor for pennies on the dollar. I fired your sycophant executives. And the headquarters? That big, beautiful glass tower downtown?" Arthur leaned in close, so close Marcus could smell the faint scent of expensive cologne and old money. "I donated the building to the city. Construction crews are there right now. They are sandblasting Caldwell off the granite facade. It's being repurposed as a high-security shelter for women and children escaping domestic abuse. It will be named the Eleanor Sterling Sanctuary." Marcus stared at the table, his world fracturing. Everything he had done, the affair, the attempted murder, the lies, was for money and power. And now, the very man he tried to rob had used that same money to erase him from existence. "Why didn't you just kill me?" Marcus whispered, tears of frustration and impotence finally spilling over. "You have the power. You could have had me killed in this cell." Arthur turned to the door, rapping his cane on the metal to signal the guard. "Death is too quick, Marcus. It's too easy." Arthur looked back over his shoulder, his eyes hard as diamonds. "I want you to sit in a cell for the next 20 years. I want you to wake up every morning knowing that you are poor, that you are forgotten, that your company is gone, that your name is gone." The guard opened the door. "Enjoy the rest of the trial," Arthur said softly. "I hear the public defender they're assigning you is very overworked." Arthur walked out, the tap-tap-tap of his cane fading down the hallway. Marcus sat alone in the silence. He looked at his hands, the hands that had tried to strangle the life out of his wife's future. They were shaking uncontrollably. He realized then that the prison sentence wouldn't be the punishment. The punishment was already complete. Marcus Caldwell had ceased to matter. 5 years had passed since the gavel fell, sealing Marcus Caldwell away from the world he once thought he owned. Stafford Creek Correction Center was a world of grey. Grey walls, grey floors, grey food, and the grey, shapeless jumpsuits that stripped every man of his identity. For inmate 8940, formerly known as Marcus Caldwell, the adjustment had been a slow, agonizing descent into madness. He didn't mix with the general population. He was too arrogant, too soft. He spent his days in the library, not reading, but drafting endless appeals on crinkled legal pads with a dull golf pencil. He told himself this was temporary. He told himself he was still a CEO, just displaced. He kept his fingernails obsessively clean. He practiced his public speaking in the mirror of his tiny cell, whispering charisma to a reflection that was growing older, thinner, and harder. Today was the day. His first parole hearing, due to good behavior, which was simply Marcus thinking he was too good to engage in prison yard fights, and a clerical push to relieve overcrowding, he had been granted an early review. Marcus adjusted his collar in the reflection of the stainless steel toilet. He slicked back his greying hair with water. "You've got this," he whispered to himself, flashing the smile that had once closed million-dollar deals. "You are Marcus Caldwell. You can charm anyone. You just need to sell them the story of the repentant man." He believed it. He truly believed that the world outside was waiting for him, that his talents were missed, that Elena was probably struggling without his brilliance. "Inmate 8940, movement!" a guard barked, banging on the bars. Marcus stood up, smoothing his jumpsuit. "My name is Mr. Caldwell," he corrected automatically. "Move it, 8940, the guard spat. As he walked down the long, echoing corridor, shackles clinking around his ankles, Marcus didn't feel shame. He felt anticipation. He was walking toward the exit. Meanwhile, in the heart of Seattle, the rain had cleared, leaving the city sparkling under a crisp autumn sun. The skyline had changed in 5 years. The building that once bore the imposing steel letters of Caldwell Tech had been transformed. The cold corporate glass was now softened by vertical gardens climbing the exterior. The plaza, once a barren concrete slab designed to discourage loitering, was now a playground filled with laughter. The sign above the entrance was carved from warm, inviting oak. The Elena Sterling Sanctuary. In the penthouse suite, the very office where Marcus used to sip scotch and plot his wife's demise, Elena Sterling stood by the window. She looked different. The fragile, terrified girl who had been gaslighted into silence was dead. In her place stood a woman of formidable grace. She wore a cream-colored power suit that accentuated her confidence. Her hair was styled in a sharp, chic bob. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. "Madam President?" Elena turned. Her assistant, a young woman named Sarah, stood in the doorway holding a tablet. "The board of directors is ready for you downstairs. They want to discuss the expansion of the Safe Haven initiative into Europe, and Mr. Sterling is on line 1. "Put my father through," Elena said, her voice steady and melodious. She tapped her earpiece. "Dad?" "Ellie," Arthur Sterling's voice came through, sounding older, a bit raspier, but still sharp as a razor. "Are you ready for today?" Eleanor looked out the window, her eyes fixing on the distant grey smudge of the prison complex miles away. She knew what day it was. She had marked it on her calendar, not with fear, but with determination. "I'm ready," Eleanor said. Is everything set up? The video link is established, Arthur confirmed. I'm at the house with Leo. We didn't want you to be alone, but you insisted on being in the office. I need to be here, Dad, Elena said, her gaze sweeping over the room that used to be Marcus's sanctuary. I need to be in the place where he thought he was a god, to remind him that he is nothing. Mommy! A shout erupted in the background of the call. Hi, Leo, Elena smiled, her face softening instantly. Grandpa says we're going to watch you on TV, the 5-year-old chirped. Leo was the image of his mother, kind eyes, a gentle spirit, but he had Arthur's stubborn chin. He knew nothing of Marcus. To Leo, his father was just a blank space in a storybook, a shadow that never touched him. That's right, baby, Elena cooed. Mummy has to do something important. I love you. Love you too. The line clicked off. Elena took a deep breath. She walked over to the massive oak desk, her desk now. She picked up a single file folder. It didn't contain lawyers' threats or angry letters. It contained something far more powerful. She checked her reflection in the glass. She didn't see a victim. She saw the executioner of a ghost. Let's get this over with, she whispered. The parole hearing room was small, smelling of stale coffee and floor wax. 3 board members sat behind a long table, their faces impassive. Marcus sat in the metal chair, his hands folded politely on the table. He had just finished his speech. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He had cried on cue. He had quoted the Bible. He had spoken about how the accident in the hospital haunted his dreams every night. I was a man under immense pressure, Marcus said, his voice trembling perfectly. I made a terrible, unforgivable mistake in a moment of panic. But these 5 years have humbled me. I have found faith. I only want to return to society to make amends, to be a father to my son, to perhaps apologize to my wife, if she will hear me. The head of the parole board, a stern woman named Warden Holloway, peered over her glasses. You speak very well, Mr. Caldwell. I speak from the heart, ma'am, Marcus said humbly. Your psychiatric evaluations suggest you are a model prisoner, Holloway noted, flipping through a file. Intelligent, non-violent, determined. Marcus suppressed a smirk. He had them. He could feel it. The other 2 board members were nodding. They saw a fallen businessman, not a monster. They saw a man who deserved a second chance. We have received no letters of protest from the community, Holloway continued. Usually, in high-profile cases, the public outcry is significant. But it seems quiet. Perhaps they have forgiven me, Marcus suggested softly. However, Holloway said, pausing, the victim has requested to provide a statement via live video feed. This is her right. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. Elena. He hadn't seen her in 5 years. He imagined she would look tired, broken, raising a child alone, probably living off her father's money, still traumatized by what he did. He prepared his face to look sorrowful, to look lovingly at her. If he could just make eye contact, he knew he could get inside her head again. He could manipulate her guilt. She's weak, he thought. She always was. I just need to look sad. Patch her in, Holloway ordered. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life. Marcus looked up, ready to see a weeping woman in a living room. He didn't. The image that appeared on the screen made the breath hitch in his throat. Elena was sitting in his chair, in his office, behind his desk. But the office was different, brighter. The dark mahogany paneling he loved had been painted a crisp, authoritative white. The blinds were open, flooding the room with light, and Elena, she looked like a queen. She wasn't crying, she wasn't trembling. She was staring into the camera lens with a look of absolute, terrifying indifference. She looked at him, not with hate, but with the casual disinterest one might show a bug on the sidewalk. "Mrs. Caldwell-Sterling," Warden Holloway said respectfully, "do you have a statement regarding the parole of inmate 8940? "I do," Elena's voice came through the speakers. It was rich and strong. Marcus leaned toward the screen, desperate to assert his presence. "Elena," he choked out, trying to summon tears. "Elena, honey, I'm so sorry. Look at me. It's Marcus. I've changed. I miss you. I miss our boy." Elena didn't even blink. She didn't react to his voice. It was as if he was on mute. "Please proceed," Holloway said to the screen, ignoring Marcus. Elena looked down at a paper, then back at the camera. "5 years ago," Elena began, "this man tried to suffocate me while I was giving birth to our son. He did it for money. He did it because he viewed me as an asset to be liquidated, not a human being." "I was sick," Marcus interrupted, standing up. "I was stressed. Elena, please." "Sit down, inmate," the guard barked, shoving Marcus back into the chair. Elena continued, her voice unwavering. "For a long time I was afraid of him. I was afraid of his anger, his manipulation, his reach. But over the last 5 years, I have learned something important." She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the desk. "I learned that Marcus Caldwell didn't build this company. He didn't build this family. He was a parasite. And when you remove a parasite, the host doesn't die. It heals. It gets stronger." She held up a photograph to the camera. It was a picture of Leo. He was standing on a soccer field, wearing a bright yellow jersey, a gold medal around his neck. He was laughing, his head thrown back in pure joy. Arthur Sterling was standing next to him, beaming with pride. "This is Leo," Elena said. "He is 5 years old. He speaks 2 languages. He plays the piano. He is kind. He is gentle, and he is happy." She lowered the photo and looked directly into the lens, piercing Marcus's soul. "He does not know your name, Marcus. We haven't told him. To him, you do not exist. You are not a tragedy. You are not a villain. You are simply absent." Marcus felt a coldness spread through his chest that was colder than the prison cell. "You can't do that," he whispered. "He's my son." "And regarding his rehabilitation," Elena continued, addressing the board, "Mr. Caldwell claims he is ready to rejoin society. He claims he wants to work. But I must inform the board of a reality Mr. Caldwell seems to have forgotten." Elena picked up a second document. "As the owner of the Sterling Caldwell assets, I have blacklisted his name from every major industry in the state. I have spoken to the banks. I have spoken to the tech firms. If you release him today, he will not find a job. He will not find a loan. He has no home to go to, as I have sold his penthouse and donated the proceeds to the hospital that saved my life." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "If you release him, you are releasing a man with nothing. No money, no power, no family, no legacy. The punishment you gave him was confinement. The punishment I gave him was erasure." Elena's expression finally shifted. A small, pitying smile played on her lips. "Marcus," she said, addressing him directly for the first time, "you spent your whole life trying to be the most important man in the room. I want you to know that in the world out here, you aren't the villain of the story anymore. You're just a footnote. We don't hate you. We just don't think about you at all." She reached for the camera. "I oppose parole. Not because he is dangerous, but because he hasn't yet learned that he is nobody." The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus stared at the blank monitor. The image of his smiling son and his thriving ex-wife was burned into his retinas. We don't think about you at all." That sentence hurt more than any physical blow. It shattered the last defense he had, his narcissism. He could handle being hated. Hate meant he was significant. But indifference, being erased, being a footnote. "Mr. Caldwell?" Warden Holloway asked. Marcus didn't answer. He was shaking. A low sound started in his throat, a laugh that sounded like a sob. "He doesn't know my name," Marcus whispered to the empty air. She erased me." Holloway looked at the other board members. They exchanged glances. The charisma was gone. The mask had fallen, revealing a broken, hollow man who had just realized his entire existence had been dismantled while he sat in a concrete box. "Parole is denied," Holloway announced, stamping the file. "Next review in 5 years." "No!" Marcus suddenly screamed, lunging at the table. "You can't leave me in here. I'm Marcus Caldwell. I built that tower. That's my office. That's my son. Guards!" 2 heavy hands grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. He kicked and thrashed, dragging his heels across the linoleum. "She's lying!" he shrieked, his voice cracking, stripping his throat raw. "I matter! I matter! Tell her I matter!" They dragged him out of the room. His screams echoed down the hallway, bouncing off the walls, growing fainter and fainter, until the heavy steel door slammed shut, cutting him off. Inside the room, the silence returned. The warden sighed, closing the folder. Back in the penthouse, Elena removed her earpiece. Her hand was trembling slightly, just a little. Arthur's voice came through the speakerphone on the desk. "You did good, Ellie. You did good." Elena walked over to the desk and sat down. She looked at the picture of Leo. She looked at the busy streets below, filled with people living their lives, unaware of the drama that had just played out. She felt a weight lift off her shoulders, a weight she hadn't realized she was still carrying. It was the weight of needing to prove herself to him. It was gone. He was just a man in a box now. "It's over, Dad," she said softly. "No, sweetheart," Arthur replied warmly. "It's just beginning. The car is downstairs. Leo wants ice cream." Eleanor smiled. She grabbed her purse and the photo of her son. She walked to the door of the office, but paused at the light switch. She looked back at the empty room one last time. For years, this room had been a symbol of Marcus's greed. Now, it was just a room. She flipped the switch. "Goodbye, Marcus," she whispered into the dark. She closed the door, walking out into the hallway, where the sunlight was streaming in, bright and warm. She didn't look back. She had a legacy to build, and a son to raise. And for the first time in a long time, the air was sweet, and breathing was easy. And that, my friends, is the ultimate revenge. Marcus Caldwell thought he could take Elena's breath away, but in the end, she took his entire world. He learned the hardest lesson of all, that true power isn't about money or fear. It's about love, resilience, and the family you build. While Marcus rots in a cell, screaming at walls that don't care, Elena and Leo are out there living a beautiful life, completely free of his shadow. The greatest revenge isn't violence, it's happiness. It's succeeding so brightly that the person who tried to destroy you becomes nothing more than a bad memory. I hope this story gave you chills. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think erasing Marcus from his son's life was the right thing to do? Or was it too cruel? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.